Hi, welcome to Changeducating. In this episode, we will be discussing strategies that teachers can use to help providing quality education to their students. Let's get to it. My name is Mariana Gómez. I'm a mass communication and journalism student, and today joining me is
Andrés Felipe Padrón Villafañe. I'm a law student in Uninorte, in Barranquilla, Colombia.
We know that teaching during a pandemic has been a huge challenge for educators, and that even after a year without actually going to a classroom, we're still trying to figure out a rhythm to work with. Teaching through a computer wasn't what you signed for, we're aware. However, this is a role you've been trying to fulfill until social distancing is no longer a thing and we can go back to the classroom. I want you to ask yourself this question. In years to come, when your students tell others about how they studied during a global pandemic, what do you want them to remember as your teaching methods? I'm sure that the answer to that question has to do with being a teacher who cared about what they were going through or who helped maintain some normalcy while the world was going through a lot of things. Okay, easier said than done. But we have some strategies that may help you reach the goal of being that kind of teacher.
But before we get you guys started, it is important to know the struggle that you guys have been through. According to the United Nations, teachers across the globe were largely unprepared to support continuity of learning and adapt to new teaching methods. In sub-Saharan Africa, only 64% of primary and 50% of secondary teachers have received even minimum training, which often does not include basic digital skills. Even in contexts with adequate infrastructure and connectivity, many educators lack the most basic informatics skills, meaning they will likely struggle with their own ongoing professional development, let alone with facilitating quality distance learning. The COVID-19 has highlighted that both initial and teacher education are in need of a reform to better train teachers in new methods of education delivery. Teachers' physical health was put at risk when required to provide face-to-face education for the children of essential workers and vulnerable children. Adding to the fear of being exposed to the virus was the fear of losing salaries and benefits, all while coping with increased workloads and family responsibilities. This is especially true of female teachers who had to continue teaching and bore a disproportionate share of family responsibilities. For this reason, we've decided to dedicate a whole chapter of our podcast to you, the teachers, since you've held education on your shoulders and your labor is one, if not the most important of them all. Here are a few tips and ideas on how to maintain quality education during remote learning.
One of the strategies that the teachers should consider is evaluating themselves every once in a while to prevent being burnout. First thing to do is try to check on your students every now and then. We know it's not easy due to the pandemic, but try to ask them how they're doing, and if they need help with something and you think you can reach out, go for it.
Something you should consider doing is meeting with the students for briefer periods and more frequently. If you can change the schedule of your classes, do it, why not? It's easier for you and for your students to do 3 sessions of 30 minutes than 1 session of 1.5 hours that's probably gonna leave you exhausted.
If you feel like you're the only one paying attention to the class because you're the one dictating it, try to design participation lessons. Don't just encourage your students to participate, but design a lesson that won't work without their participation and engagement.
Emphasizing on autonomy is a great way to teach during lockdown too. So start your research on really interesting topics for your students to look up on their own. Do an asynchronous session if you can and encourage them to start learning on their own and look for methods that work for them when they're not with you.
Find tools that make teaching easier. You don't have to know every function that the platform you're using has. However, you should know that there are a lot of platforms to help you create different types of activities while you're in class. Do you want to do a fun quiz? Try Kahoot. Do you want to see the students answering questions? Use Padlet. The internet has a lot of useful resources for the teachers. You just have to take a look, and you'll find a bunch of things that can help you and your students.
Another aspect you should consider is having a backup plan. What happens if your internet connection fails, or if one of your students' connection fails? One of the ideas you should always consider is recording every class and having material prepared in case you can't connect. You never know. so your students can work on their own and keep going with the class despite the problems that may show up.
Now, if we're talking about students who unfortunately don't have the resources to assist remote classes and you want to help, maybe you can talk to the principal of the school, try to find a solution. Does the library in your school have laptops? If the answer is yes, the next question will be, is the school willing to borrow those laptops to the students? This way, more students will assist their classes and keep going with their education despite the pandemic. In case the school does not have laptops, why not try to reach out to a telecommunication industry that's willing to help your students? And we're not referring to giving away laptops, but to borrow them, and after the pandemic is over, they will have to return them.
We could keep going with these strategies, but we would need an entire podcast dedicated of the strategies for you. But I think this covers a few of the things you could use to improve your classes and make remote learning and teaching a little bit easier, not only for you, but also for your students. This pandemic hasn't been easy for anyone, but if we keep looking for strategies and ideas to make our life a little easier, we hope we can get back to schools anytime soon. But for now, please stay safe. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of Changeducating. In the next one, we will talk about strategies for the students during remote learning. Bye.
Bye.